This is K.M. Weiland, and you're listening to the 336th episode of the Helping Writers Become Authors podcast. So, as you know, there are writers out there, and then there are word players, which is you guys, all the listeners of this podcast and the readers of my blog and my writing books. So I'm setting up something kind of special for all the word players out there. You guys are why I do what I do. So I decided to create a special group that will give you early access to my upcoming writing how-to books, my audiobooks, my courses, and special events, as well as exclusive giveaways. So here's how it works. Whenever I have a new writing book coming out, members of this Word Players group are the ones who will be notified early and given the opportunity to grab a free digital review copy long before the book actually goes on sale. And it gets better. I will also be sending members a free digital copy of any of my already published writing books in exchange for an honest review posted to Amazon or other review sites. You'll also get a free pass to the exclusive Word Player Facebook group, where you can ask me writing questions and interact with other serious writers. And throughout the year, you'll have the opportunity to enter exclusive giveaways for books and other prizes. These will be giveaways that are not open to anyone but members of the Word Players group. So if this sounds like something you'd like to be a part of, you can stop by my site at helpingwritersbecomeauthors.com/become-a-wordplayer. To qualify for Word Player membership, you will need to have read and reviewed at least one of my books. But then, if your Helping Writers Become Authors library is still incomplete and you'd like a review copy of one of my writing how-to books, you can choose your book on the sign-up form, and then after you've sent me the link to its review, I'll send you another one. So, I hope you'll take advantage of this and jump on by the site to become a full-fledged, certified word player. And now, I hope you enjoyed this week's podcast entitled Authenticity versus Accuracy: 12 Ways to Ace Your Novel Research. I'm starting to get paranoid. It happens with every book I write. I reach the end of the first draft, start tying off loose ends on the first round of edits, and prepare to send the book to my first round of beta readers. That's when I inevitably start asking myself panicked questions about the accuracy of my novel research. Maybe these self-directed questions will sound familiar. What if my novel research isn't good enough? What if I put a street on the wrong side of the city? What if I've got the dialect all wrong? What if I've included a glaring anachronism? The book I'm currently at work on, my historical superhero saga Wayfarer, is set in London during the Regency era. Think Jane Austen. In many ways, it has been the most difficult of all the historical novels I've written, primarily because it takes place in such a popular period. I had some leeway in writing about the medieval Crusades. For one thing, the language is so different that perfect accuracy isn't desired, much less demanded. And in the American West, where legend has taken over fact in so many areas. But the Regency period put a chapeau bras in the wrong place, and fanatical readers well know it. Never mind that the book is set in London, which means correctly portraying a city I've never visited. And don't get me started on the language. Unlike the Middle Ages, 1820 isn't so far away that the language of the period isn't still decipherable to modern ears. What that means, of course, is every word choice must be filtered through not just the demands of British English, but also the question, did that word even exist back then? Cue the paranoia. Now, there are two good reasons for any author to indulge in this paranoia over the facts in a novel, whether it's historical or not. Reason number one, your readers are smarter than you. Scary thought, ain't it? Now, granted, not all of them are going to be smarter, aka better read on your subject than you are, but I guarantee there will be a lot of them. No matter how conscientious you are in your research about Roman sewer systems or stamp collecting, there will always be someone who knows something you don't. And if that person happens to read your book, they may well call you out on your mistakes. Reason number 2 to panic: poor novel research destroys suspension of disbelief. Now, this reason is by far the more important of the two, however closely related. The whole point of novel research, after all, is to create a seamless reading experience. We want to immerse readers in the detailed and realistic worlds we create for our characters. If you've got your Olympic equestrian character casually mounting her horse on the right side instead of the left, you're going to instantly pop that suspension of disbelief bubble for any reader knowledgeable about horses and riding. In short, blatant inaccuracies can ruin your book. So, do your research. End of story. Stop panicking. Now, that might sound a little too simple of a solution after all that fear-mongering up there. And maybe it is, a little. But let's be practical here. There is absolutely no way you can achieve perfect accuracy in your novel. Never mind what Yoda says, the best you can do is try. After that, stop worrying about accuracy and start worrying about authenticity. A story, by its very nature, is an illusion. The characters aren't real, the events aren't real, the settings and events, even if portraying real life, are Shakespeare's quote-unquote but shadows. That's why readers must suspend their disbelief in the first place. And they do. They willingly buy into the magic trick, provided the magician, that's you, makes it look real. By far, the most important factor in convincing readers to suspend disbelief is creating a story world that seems real. Readers are not asking for reality. They only want something that seems real enough for them to pretend for a couple of hours that it is real. That's where authenticity comes into play. As long as you have accuracy enough to provide a solid basis for your story, you then have a wide open canvas upon which to create the illusion of an authentic experience. To put it indelicately, hook your readers with the truth and they'll swallow all the rest of your story's lies. So how can you find this balance of accuracy and authenticity in your book? Let's examine 12 steps you can put into action right away. First off, we'll start with 6 steps to achieve accuracy in your novel research. So research is easy. All you have to do is read and remember. But it requires time and discipline up front. So use these 6 steps to break your task into manageable steps. Number 1, begin with a basic understanding of your subject. Presumably, if you're interested in writing about a particular subject, then that very interest has led you to at least a basic knowledge about it. For example, if you want to write about a homicide detective, then you might have been drawn to the subject because you enjoy TV shows about detectives. You know enough to at least create the framework in your mind for a story about a detective of your own. Number 2, discover the general questions you need to ask. Using that general knowledge from step 1, write your outline. Or if you're a pantser, at least figure out the general beats and events in your story. This will help you get a handle on the general questions you're going to need to answer about your subject. For example, after writing my outline for my 1920s barnstorming novel, Storming, I ended up with a list of specific research topics I knew I would need to research, such as aeronautics, barnstorming, weather, the 1920s, and Victorian Russia. Number 3, collect a bibliography. Using those questions and topics from the last step, you're going to create a research bibliography. Then search your local libraries and Amazon to find sources that will answer all your major questions. And depending on the nature of your subject, you may also want to seek out experts to whom you can talk or who can give you access to hands-on experiences. Number 4, commit serious time to novel research. Writers often ask me how much time I devote to novel research. Basically, as long as it takes me to read through my list of research books. Wayfarer's research took me 6 months. And where do I find the time to do all that research? Easy. Writing time. Whatever part of the process I'm working on, whether outlining, researching, writing, editing, I do it during quote-unquote writing time, which for me is 2 hours every morning. This, of course, means that during the research period, I get to sit around reading all morning and call it work. Number 5, organize novel research notes. Do not trust your memory. Write down everything. Personally, I find it well worth the extra time it requires to transcribe everything I highlight in my novel research. And e-readers make this super easy since you can find all your highlights online and then simply copy-paste them into your research document. This makes my notes searchable on the computer and allows me to collate them under pertinent headings. Your research will do you little good while writing if you can't access it. Number 6, discover the specific questions you need to ask. So armed with all that general knowledge you gleaned during your novel research, you can then write your book. You should be well equipped to write knowledgeably and confidently about your subject. Even still, you will inevitably run into further questions during the blow-by-blow action of the actual story. Some of these questions will be simple enough for you to look up on the internet during writing. And for those that prove more complicated, you can include them in a running list and do whatever follow-up research is necessary after the first draft. So, all that research was your logical left brain's contribution to your story's verisimilitude. Now, it's time to unleash your creative right brain and let it take these scattered pieces of your research and connect the dots between them to create an authentic experience for your readers. So here are 6 steps to achieve authenticity in your novel research. Step number 1, do your research. Authenticity must begin with a pursuit of accuracy. You can't build an authentic experience of life as a concert pianist if you know nothing about music. Emphasizing authenticity over accuracy does not provide permission to simply ignore the facts. You must start with a solid foundation of reality if you're going to have any chance of convincing readers to believe in the unreal parts of your story. Number 2, support every lie upon 2 truths. In writing any kind of story, you will occasionally find yourself faced with situations in which you either don't know the facts or in which the story demands you tweak the facts in order to serve the plot. In either case, here's a good rule of thumb for protecting the authenticity of your story. Every time you make something up, make sure the quote-unquote lie is supported by at least 2 truths. Historical novels do this all the time by surrounding a fictional character with people who actually existed in the period. We believe in emperors Marcus Aurelius and Commodus, so why not a general named Maximus while we're at it? Number 3, show readers what they expect to see. The very essence of authenticity is in validating the experience readers expect to have. Did Al Capone really say, I want him dead, I want his family dead, I want his house burned to the ground? It doesn't matter, because this is exactly what we expect Al Capone to say. It creates no cognitive dissonance in our expectations about 1920s gangsters. Now, the flip side of this is that sometimes you will find you can't use certain accurate facts. If a fact doesn't jive with your reader's expectations, then you need to question whether its totally legitimate inclusion is actually worth the risk of jostling their suspension of disbelief. Christian novelist Shatona Havig commented to me on Facebook, "Funny story, in researching my 1901 novel, I was trying to be careful to use slang of the day, syntax, everything. We try, right? Well, I found that even innocent things they would have said sound much too modern, such as, you have the coolest yard in town. Seems all wrong." Number 4, don't sweat the details. Remember my paranoia over Wayfarer's presentation of an accurate 1820 London experience? On this last edit, I've been conscientiously researching the etymology of any word I thought might be suspicious. That's a lot of suspicion. It's also, after a certain point, ridiculous. See if you can tell me what's wrong with this excerpt. He had no notion life wasn't always a long journey to a distant horizon. Sometimes it ended in a blink, in a blur of fire and pain. Did you catch it? Turns out blink and blur didn't mean then what they mean now. Now, Emma Woodhouse may not have been able to blink away the tears that blurred her eyes after Mr. Knightley gave her what for, but I gotta tell you, my protagonist totally does. Even though these words aren't accurate within the historical setting, I would be shocked to discover any reader who noticed, much less took exception to them. As an author, you must occasionally make the call to depart from the smaller details of accuracy for the sake of your overall story. Don't sweat the details too much. It is fiction, after all. Number 5, maintain consistency. Here's the secret to authenticity. It must walk hand in hand with consistency. Indeed, consistency is the whole point. It's why we avoid every detail that might jar, even if it's an accurate detail. It's why we don't sweat the little unrecognizable errors. As long as you're presenting your story's truth with absolute consistency, readers will buy into it with very little effort. Number 6, show your bravado. Finally, be brave. Trust in your skills to create an authentic experience for your readers, and trust in that experience to help readers glide right past the places where you've sacrificed absolute accuracy for the sake of the bigger picture. As any magician knows, you have to sell the performance. If you look like you believe 100% in the illusion you've created, readers will be all the more likely to follow your lead and believe in it themselves. But also, be wise. Sometimes, no matter how perfect a word is to a scene, it still won't belong. As in Western writer Brad Dennison's tongue-in-cheek comment to me. He said, "The things you wish you could include in a story. In the Western I'm working on now, Johnny McCabe didn't even know his brother Joe was in the area. Johnny says to him, 'How is it I didn't see you out there?' Joe says, 'Ain't a man alive can find me when I don't want to be found.' I would so like to have Johnny say, 'What are you, Batman?'" The balance between accuracy and authenticity is ultimately the balance of the entire story. If your mastery of authenticity is strong enough to convince readers to suspend their disbelief, then they'll forgive and even embrace your occasional lapse of accuracy. Thank you for listening to the Wordplay Podcast. To read a transcript of this episode, you can visit my website at helpingwritersbecomeauthors.com. And be sure to check back again next week.